Hey guys, Godric here with Dragon Masters, bringing you kind of a different, unique video today. So all the time I get asked, how can I get higher level awards for my belts? Or how can I convince my region or my kingdom that belts deserve the higher end awards? So often people will message me and say, hey, I'm stuck at 4 or 5 or 6, and I can't get past that. And so today, I can't really give you exactly how you can do it, but I can look back and explain my journey and go through from the beginning to the end, and maybe that will help you out. I can tell you what worked in my kingdom, might work in yours, it might not. So what we're going to do today is going to explain from the time I started playing until I got my Masterhood in 2019 in the game of Amtgard. So last year I was awarded my Master Dragon in the Kingdom of the Rising Winds, and this is kind of just a outline of my journey through it. If you're a newer player, I would highly recommend that you keep track of this stuff. It's really neat and interesting to go back and see what you did in the past and what awards got what. I know for me, like some of the awards in 2011, 2012, I kind of had to guess on. In the orc, it didn't have a description of what it was, and it was kind of based on my memory. And so some of these might not be exactly what I got the awards for, but to the best of my memory, they are. So we'll go ahead and walk through. First time I ever picked up a foam sword was 2010. 2011 is when I came to my first Amtgard Park Day. So I want to start here. I only had 32 sign-ins from 2011 to 2015. This is when I was in college, and so I was playing very sporadically, didn't really play on a regular basis. When I would come home, I would play with my friends during the summer and on breaks and stuff, but at school, we didn't really have a park that was close, and I drove to the park that was there a couple of times, and I just didn't know very many people, and so it wasn't that much fun for me. But I just want to state here, I mean, the first 4 years of my Amtgard career was just a completely casual player. So keep that in mind as we go through this. So in 2011, here's a picture of the first ANS award that I got. I received my first Griffin, my first Warrior, and my first Garber. And there is that awful piece of garb. This is at my first event that I went to. This was just a pillow sheet that I cut out and then sewed down the silver parts there. Absolutely terrible, but first attempt, first Garber. So now we'll jump to 2012. Here are some of the things that I entered in my very first local Shire Dragon Master. The black and red little necklace there was mine, the belt was mine, and the wood burning was mine. So we'll jump here. In 2012, I earned my first dragon for a belt we'll see on the next page, a first owl for the shield, that plastidip shield that you see right there in all of its terribleness, my first rose, my first smith. I also earned my second Garber for a black and white tunic, which we'll get to, second Warrior, second Griffin, second Owl for the PD shield, and this is when I was paged to my first knight, Sir Horace, who was a Knight of the Flame in my home park of Blackmarsh in the Kingdom of the Rising Winds. So that shield right there was my first plastidip shield, got my first Owl for that. The second shield on the right here is what I got my second Owl for. That shield lasted me forever. And this belt right here, let me go back, was my first dragon. It was Paracord, really, really loose weave, but it was my first attempt, and that was what I got my first dragon for. There is the garb that I wore, that I made. First time I had really sewn something together like that, and that was my second Garber at my local park in 2012. So now we move on to 2013. This is where I got my third Garber. This was really the first big belt that I made that I sold. This was the first belt that wasn't for me. I made it for a friend. You can also see here the beginning of jumping around back and forth. One of the things that was really difficult for me on my journey was I got awards all over the place for belts. I'd get dragons, I'd get garbers, I'd get owls, I'd get all of them. And so this one you can kind of see this was a third garber that I got for this, and it jumped. You can also notice this is the first time I did the triple helix, one of my favorite end knots to this day. So I didn't play any didn't get any awards in 2014. That was the year I graduated college and didn't really get the opportunity to play at all. So 2015 is when I moved back to Indiana, where I was from, and this is kind of when I decided that I was going to take this seriously and I was going to try and push for some higher end stuff, higher end second and thirds here. But I did receive my second dragon for another blue, orange, and white belt. And then I received a third dragon for a plastic dip shield, which we'll show. Got my third griffin and a third owl somewhere. I'm not sure what for. It may have been another plastic dip shield, but I don't have any official record of that. So that belt on the right there is what I got my second, what was that? Second dragon for. That belt was my second dragon. And that plastic dip shield on the left was my third owl. And you can see I'm still using the terrible rings on these belts, and this was the vertical weave. This is one of the first vertical ones that I had done. Now we'll jump to 2016. Now 2016 was a very big year for me. That is when I won my first Kingdom level Dragon Master, which when I won it at the time, my highest award was 3. I switched and became a man-at-arms to a Serpent Knight. His name was Sir Manima. He lived played at the park north of me. I got my Lord title, my first Lion, my second Rose, my second Smith, my third Rose, my third Warrior. And then we get to Dragons. So I actually earned 2 4th Dragons and 2 5th Dragons. So I traveled to the local barony, and I won their tournament, and they gave me a 4th and a 5th. And then I entered in the Kingdom Dragon Master, and I went to that event, and then I won that, and the Kingdom gave me a 4th and a 5th as well. And so I have 2 4ths and 2 5ths. So my 4th dragon was earned for the Horseshoe Belt, which we'll get to. I earned a 4th Garber for another set of belts, and I earned a 4th Owl for a belt that I made for a friend. So if you look at this, in this year alone, I got 3 4th level awards for belts, all for like 1 dragon, 1 Garber, and 1 Owl. And then my 5th dragon I earned twice. One mainly was for winning Kingdom level Dragon Master, and my highest scoring piece there was actually a how-to, pretty in-depth book, pamphlet maybe, full color of how to weave. And so it was just a tutorial book, and that one scored, I want to say it was like an 8.1 out of 10. Like it scored pretty well. It was my highest entry for this tournament. So there is the Horseshoe Belt that I made. This is one of my favorite belts that I've ever made. And so it's got the ring in the back, the circle ring, which fits in your back. And then the horseshoe there, one side of it, or well, I guess both sides of it, I came around and I brought it around and sewed it together. So there's like a loop there, and it slides over the horseshoe on either side. And then I went down, and I got the idea for this one because it was knights. They got spurs, and I always thought that was kind of neat, so I wanted to make a cowboy belt. So I got a horseshoe, and then those are 357 shells down there on the bottom that are glued into it. And then this other one, which I got my 4th Garber for, was the 4 pathways. And so I entered all of these as one item in a Dragon Master to show the different trim, tried to make each of them a little different there. And then this is one that I made for a friend of mine. This is my first attempt at the chevron weave. This is for a good buddy of mine named Bear Brown. This one scored very high at levels, or at Kingdom as well. So now we move to 2017. I won a 2nd Kingdom Dragon Master, and I'm pretty sure I won a Qualls in here too. I didn't list my Qualls ones. I was squired now to Sir Anavrin, who is my current knight. He's a Flame Knight playing out of the Crossroads in Indianapolis. I earned my Baronet title. I was the monarch at my shire, which went to barony, which got to duchy numbers before I moved. So I got my baronet title for that. 4th Griffin, 4th Warrior, 5th Garber for a Best in Show combo belt, a 5th Owl for a Placidip shield, which I don't have a picture of, and my 5th Warrior. Then I got my 6th Dragon for winning Kingdom Qualls with the first combo belt and some Dark Glory belts, an Owl, 6th Owl for a Lamellar suit, and a 6th Garber for belts, and a 7th Dragon for Bane's belt. Now, interesting story here. If you look down on the 6th Dragon, my first attempt at my combo belt, a double belt, ended up getting me a 6th Dragon. Then, the next tournament, I entered another one where I had learned, and it was Best in Show. It beat Armor, it beat Garb. I mean, it was my best scoring belt of all time, and I actually got a 5th Garber for that one. So the inferior belt got a 6th Dragon with under 1 Regent, and then the next one got a 5th Garber, a lower level award, even though it was Best in Show. So I'll show you some pictures here of that. The belt on the left here is my first attempt. Those are my company colors in a double belt. And then you can see down on the bottom left of that, the weave wasn't very consistent, but it still scored really well. I got my 6th Dragon for that one. And then over here on the right, this is my Best in Show, best belt I've ever made in my opinion. I still wear it every day. It's my Squire Belt and my company belt. This one got Best in Show. It was a 9.55 or something. Like, it was almost perfect. I think it was all 10s in 1/9 from one judge, and then everybody else was all 10s. Like I said, it beat out a full suit of armor, and it beat out a fully appliqued tunic. That one got me a 4th Garber. We'll get to this in a little bit, but one of the most frustrating parts of my journey was I felt, depending on the regent, there was no precedent in our kingdom. And so I would get whatever they would swap me, right? I'd get a dragon for this one, and then I'd get a Garber for this one, and it was very difficult for me because I feel, still to this day, that belt on the right there is the best thing I've ever made. Hands down, best thing I ever made, and I ended up getting a 4th for it. I felt that my skill at this point was better, was ready for the higher level awards, but for whatever reason, bureaucracy, personalities, whatever it was, I felt at the time that I wasn't getting the high level awards, even though my skill was there. So I was getting pretty frustrated at this point. Over here on the left is a Lamellar suit that I made for high level Owl. And then on the right here, this is a Serpent Belt for a friend of mine, Sir Lily. This one's really neat because it's got a twisted steel ring, and this one is Paracord and Macrame. The green here is Macrame, which was the first time that I had really done that, which I thought it turned out really well. And this is one of the ones I got a high level, I want to say my 7th Dragon for. This was Paracord and Macrame as well. The green and the blue there are Macrame. And this is a Sword Knight's belt for Sword Knight in my company. Again, our company colors are blue and green here. That one scored really well. Now we move on to 2018. 2018, I got my 3rd Smith, my 4th Rose, my 5th Rose, and my 8th Dragon. Now, I moved at the end of 2017, and so this year was kind of a down year for me, production-wise, because I was moved states, getting all the job stuff figured out. So Amtgard kind of took a back seat in 2018. And I really started working on the award on the left here is the one that got me my 8th. The one on the right is just another one that I made for a friend. And these are shadow boxes with vinyl cutouts that I used a vinyl cutting machine for, designed and put these on there. Really proud of these. The one on the left is the one that did get me the 8th Dragon, though, which I thought was interesting. My 8th Dragon wasn't for belts. Then we moved to 2019. 2019, I have a 2nd Lion, a 4th Smith, 7th Crown. I earned my 9th Dragon for camp belts and a Flame Knight's kit, which I'll show that in a minute. And then I won another tournament and got my Master Dragon on that. That one had a bunch of different belts, the belt holes, the Flame Knight's belt, my FC Squire Belt, and winning Kingdom Dragon Master. So we'll show you some pictures. There are a lot of pictures on this one. So this one here is what was my highest scoring one in my 9th dragon competition. So essentially what this was a belt that had these little splits there, and the splits would sit on your hips, and then you could add things to it. So one of these, the Paracord one here, this is kind of a self-defense type of thing where you can clip it onto your belt, and it's got some weight down on the end. On the other hip, I had a glass bottle that I had glass etched that had a Paracord attachment to it, and there were 2 or 3 other little things that you could hook on to this belt that you could swap out depending on what you wanted, which was kind of cool. So that one scored pretty high. And then this one is one of my favorite things that I've ever made. It's a Flame Knight's belt, and so this is massive. This seems like waist tall, and it's got the flame or the phoenix there on the back, and it's got all the script there, and then pictures, theoretically, if this were given to somebody, pictures of them and their friends. Then it's got the necklace, and it's got the belt pinned up in there, and then we would put their name in, and I've got it lit up in lights. This one is probably my favorite thing that I've ever made, and it didn't score the highest, but it was one of my favorites. I absolutely loved this. This belt scored pretty well. It was a flame belt. I was able to, through bracelet patterns, put words in it, letters in it. You can see kind of just attach that there on the hips. That one scored pretty well. I think we're getting into, this is part of the Masterhood one. Let me go back and look. Nope, that was still 9th. Okay. So everything else after this is going to be the tournament I won for Masterhood. So this one, as far as I know, I'm the first one that was able to do this. I took little rubber grommets and I wove those into the belt and was able to put an actual belt ring on there. Because most of the time if I ever ask people why don't they like Paracord belts, why do they like the leather ones, they like being able to secure it. And so was able to do that, made a couple of those and entered them as one item. So judges really like the innovation there. This one was best in show for that tournament. This was a Paracord healer sash, and so it had the cord going around the waist as well. So kind of like if you're familiar with like certain firearm holsters, they will go underneath they'll go on your waist and over your shoulder to give 2 points of security. It's kind of where I got the idea for that. And so that goes around in clips. It has a little clip so you can hook there. Down at the bottom, it's got little loops where you could put all of your spell strips. And then it's got these little Paracord pulleys for yourself. If you get enchanted, you can pull one of those out. And so that one got best in show at that Dragon Master. This was a Macrame Belt that I made. The ring actually sits in the small of your back, and you bring it around and tie it in front. This one was red for Squire, and then my company colors as well. This one scored almost best in show. It was pretty high up there as well. Now this one was something completely new for me, and so it was Paracord, and then after, just a little bit below the picture on the left, it swapped to a different pattern, and then it did this, I want to say it's like a 6-strand braid or something. It's got an official name. I've linked some videos before on how to do this. Someone, I forget her name, MacGyver or something MacGyver. I don't know. She has a YouTube channel. She's an Amtgarder. I learned this from her and post her link everywhere. It's very, very good and very helpful. But this scored pretty well also. So that was from the beginning all the way to the end of my journey so far. Now, got some bonus pictures. Here's some of my favorite favorite belts that I've ever made that were not awarded for anything. So the belt on the left was the first belt that I ever sold. It was a commission, and this belt was going out of Kingdom, which was really neat. I just posted a picture of one of the ones that I had made on the ANS Anonymous page, and someone said, hey, can you make me one of those? Sent it off to another kingdom, and that kind of is what got me started down this path. The belt on the right is one that I made for a Dag Knight, a good friend of mine. really happy with how that one turned out. One on the left is a ladder weave that I made for someone in my fighting company. One on the left is the ladder weave as well, just instead of going vertical, going horizontal. I like the look of the ladder weave. It's one of my favorites. We already saw that one. So the one on the left here is actually one of the first belts that I made, and I just thought it was really cool. I haven't made another one because I hate doing the pattern there, the knots. I like weaving. I don't like knotting. If you've ever made a lot of belts, you know what I'm talking about. I really, really don't like knotting. And so, but kind of unique there. And then the one on the right, I went through a little bit where I was adding actual belt buckles to these things instead of rings. So here's just an example of that. I thought that was pretty fun, pretty cool. One on the left is a recent one that I made, and I just like the look of that one. It's for a good friend of mine in my fighting company. The one on the right is a rope belt. This was made using Japanese kumihimo. Ordered a specific wood ring to do that I could do paracord with. This belt here actually is 12 feet long. I still have it. I'm never going to make another one. It took me, I don't know, 25 hours to make it. It was terrible. I hated it, but the product that came out was awesome. Now, one on the left here is a knight's belt with the crown knot at the end that I made for another friend of mine. Really happy with that one. Nice, clean. I included this one because the more and more that I make belts, now that I've done all the fancy stuff to get Masterhood, because that's what people want to see, the belts I've made after Masterhood have just been clean, simple belts like this. I think these look significantly better than some of the fancy stuff that I was trying to do for awards. Now, the one on the right is just kind of a unique one I made years and years ago. It's got the end knot, and then it continues back into a weave, and then into an end knot again. Just thought that one was kind of cool. The one on the left here, this is a necklace, knight's chain. This is the same thing as the belt that I made. Really happy with that one. Another clean knight's belt here on the right. This is for a good friend of mine who has 3 of the belts. Really happy with how that one came out. And this one is one of the most recent ones that I've made. And this is a double belt, flame, and crown, again using that ladder weave. Absolutely love it. Now, I want to make a distinction here. From 2011 to 2015, really, I was making belts for fun, for my friends, and I sold a couple here or there. 2015 to 2016 is when I started selling and vending at events. 2016 is roughly, 2016 is when I started making things specifically for tournaments. Now, you'll hear certain people say, just make what you love and then enter it. And that's fine for some people. For me, it wasn't. I wanted specifically to win. So for 2017, 18, and especially for 2019, I was making things specifically for tournaments. And then if I could sell it afterwards, cool. If not, cool. I was making things specifically based on the judges' scores. Or the judges' comments to get higher scores, dependent on what my judges in my kingdom wanted. So this line, where you start doing that, is where most people who are struggling to get the higher level awards in their kingdom, this is kind of where they hit one of their first walls. There are going to be certain things that the regents and the ANS people in your kingdom want you to do to get higher level awards. You need to figure out what those are and then specifically make things to do that, right? Some people were telling me it was too easy. And so I had a fighting company pay me to make 20 belts, identical belts, right? It was awful. But I entered 20 identical belts as one item, right? People said that you need to get more complex. And so started doing the combo belts. When people said, well, you need to do more than just a normal belt, I did the combo belt. And then when people said, well, the combo belt's great, but you need to start doing some more stuff, right? I started doing the vinyl. And then they said, okay, well, that's pretty good, but how can you combine the vinyl with what you do with your belts? And that's where this came in, right? And so essentially it was tournament after tournament after tournament of getting multiple judges and multiple regents' feedback and throwing it all into one or two things to be able to produce items that will score well in tournaments. Now, you can get your Masterhood without winning tournaments. That wasn't me, that wasn't my route, because I enjoy tournaments. I'm a hyper competitive person, and so it was very fun for me to go and win. Currently, I think I have 3 Kingdom Dragon Masters, 2 Kingdom Qualls wins. I've got a second place in our Kingdom's Best of the Best and a second place at Keep. Like, I really enjoy competing. Some people may not, and that's fine. But for me, that was what I had the most fun with. So now I'm going to cut to Facebook real quick, and we'll pull up the questions that you guys had and go through those. Probably going to have to cut this part out. All right, so questions. First one here, what is your inspiration and design process, especially for custom Knight's belts? I'd love to hear any stories behind one, a belt and design, color, symbolism behind it. So my inspiration comes a lot from seeing what other people do. Like I'll scroll through, and before this group was a thing, the Weavers Guild for LARPing, which if you're not a part of, you should come join. If you're liking this video, you'd love that group. Before that, I would just look through the Arts and Science page, A&S Anonymous on Facebook, and I would see somebody make something for a belt, and then I would think, hey, I can do that better. And there are a lot of people who the designs that I made were done by people who had a great idea before me, but didn't necessarily have the skills to execute on it well. A lot of my ideas come from YouTube. I go and I watch, people who do the wraps on bottles or wraps on different handles for different things, or the survival bracelets. And it's a lot of watching those things and then figuring out how that can work in Amtgard. So one of the big things for me that I get credited for a lot is the end knots and pushing end knots. When I started, there were a couple of end knots. There weren't very many. And I went and just spent hours and hours and hours cruising YouTube trying to find things that would work. And so on my YouTube channel here, I have some videos on end knots. And now end knots are pretty common through most belts in our game, and then cross into other games, Dagon Belt as well. And there's more than just a normal tie-off. Like you can get really, really fancy with your end knots. And all of those that I came up with were just pulled from YouTube. They were other venues, other applications that I then used for Amtgard. That's one of the things that I am most well known for now. But when it comes to specific knights, most of the time for Knight's belts, I try and get a really nice ring. If they have one that maybe a heritage ring, like those are pretty neat. When, my Knight's belt when he was knighted had this ring on it. The belt's deteriorated, but can you make a belt with this ring? I love doing stuff like that. But most of the time when I make Knight's belts, they come to me and say, hey, I saw this, I want it, and I just make it. Sometimes when it comes to like that horseshoe belt that I showed earlier, that one was just my idea of, hey, we give spurs. That's kind of weird and unique. Who wears spurs? Cowboys. Cool. I'm gonna make a cowboy belt, right? So horseshoes and gun casings and stuff like that, bullet casings. And so sometimes it's just a jump from one thing to the next there. All right, so let's take a look at some of these. What was the biggest obstacle you had to overcome? Biggest obstacle for me was my kingdom did not have a precedent set on what award path belts were going to get. And so it was incredibly frustrating for me because for a couple of years, I felt that there were a lot of people who didn't think that belts deserved Masterhood by themselves. I was told you'll never get Masterhood just on belts or on belts alone, which is partly true, but partly not. I got my Masterhood for winning a lot of tournaments, mainly using belts. So a slight distinction there. But for a long time, my regents would look at whatever of the 3 awards that I had the least amount of, and it felt like that they were just giving me that. It's like, oh, you won a tournament, here's your 4th, because that's what you're lowest in. You win another one, we're going to swap it to another we're going to go from garbers to owls now because you have fewer of those. And it was really difficult for me. And I put a lot of malice behind it when I later found out that there wasn't. There wasn't a precedent set in our kingdom, right? There wasn't a normal way to do this. No one had pushed belts in my area as high as I had. And so they were just trying to figure it out. And after a while, once I hit like 7 or 8, the kingdom decided to go down the dragon path. And so I have a master dragon, and then 6 or 7 garbers and 6 or 7 owls. And a majority of those, all of the garbers minus my first 2, were for belts, and about half of my owls were for belts as well. And so the biggest obstacle for me was just getting our kingdom to come together and make a decision on what award it was going to be. I have another video which you can see on this channel where I talk about which one I think it should be, but that was hands down the most difficult thing for me. How do you communicate the quality and growth of your work? So I don't communicate the growth. I don't try to do that. I think it's silly when in Amtgard we say that you have to grow to be able to get your next level award. I think that's silly because there are people who can come in with a trade or a career that is awesome, and they can come in on day 1 and have 8th or 9th or masterhood level quality stuff, right? If you have if you have a professional seamstress who comes in and she enters something that wins a Dragon Master and she has no awards, I don't expect her to grow between that and her masterhood. I think that's silly. You look around at what all the other masterhoods are, and then you see, is that stuff better or worse than that? So I don't really try and show growth. Now I do try to show quality. Biggest piece of advice I can give to someone who's saying 4, 5, 6, 7, and you're trying to push on to the higher things, your items need to be quality. Your items need to be perfect. There needs to be tension the same all the way down. You need to not miss any stitches, any of the weaves. Your end knots need to be crisp. Your ends need to be finished. A lot of times when I see people who message me and say, hey, my kingdom won't give me higher awards, and then I look at the stuff that they send me, I can pick out just from pictures, not even seeing it, 3, 4, 5 things that are wrong with the belt. For me at least, by the time I hit 6 or 7 at the highest, my belts were the highest quality. Like I was getting 9s and 10s on the workmanship part of my belts. Then my 8, 9, and 10 was just bumping up the creativity and bumping up the scope, how difficult it was, and then the crazy ideas with it, like the camp belt and some of the other stuff. So if you're on the lower half of the awards, what you should be working on right now is making a perfect belt. When someone looks at it, it might not be the fanciest thing, but they cannot point out anything that you did wrong in it. I mean, I can enter right now in any kingdom tournament a basic 1-color Squire Belt, and that Squire Belt will get a 9 or a 10 on craftsmanship in most kingdoms because there's nothing wrong with it. Now, its scope and creativity scores are going to be real low because it's just a single color flat belt. A single color flat belt, so it's not very difficult, but there's nothing wrong mechanically with it. So before you start trying to get your higher level awards, get to the point where your belts are perfect. Now, for me, this came, like I said, when that company, fighting company, ordered 20 belts. I think I've made 40 for them total now, 30 or 40. It was just repetitive. It was a lot of them. But by the end of that, my belts were perfect quality. And then you can start getting into the higher end, more creative and scope and all of that stuff. How do you build credibility and appreciation for weaving as an art worth awards? Competing against plastic work, it's always hard to convince people that my work is equally fancy, shiny, cool. So here's the thing. I don't know how your kingdom works, but for us, we have like 4 categories that go into judging. You have your presentation, which is like 10%. And then you have 30% of craftsmanship. How well is your item made? 30% of creativity. Have I seen this before? 30% of scope. How difficult was it? So that's how ours are. The cool thing about belt in general, these things are judged against other things in its medium. So how does my belt compare to the average Amtgard belt? How does that piece of armor or that plastidip compare to an average piece of plastidip? And when you do this, because you are comparing it to other things, that other like things, you're judging oranges versus oranges, not apples versus oranges. That's how when I got my best in shows, I beat full tunics. I beat full, suits of armor, full plastidip stuff, because if the judges are judging fairly, it's based on like items. They're not. We have one tournament a year where it is apples versus oranges, and that is called our best of the best. That is, we throw one item from each artisan up, and we go in and decide, is this item better than this item, apples versus oranges. But most of the time, is this belt better or worse than any other belt? And so if your judges are judging that way and you get higher scores, you win, right? And so for me, in my kingdom, I didn't necessarily try and push at, I got my Masterhood through tournaments. Because when you're winning consistently, it is very difficult for a regent not to give you something, right? When I got my 4th Garber from my favorite belt I've ever made, 2nd place got a 9th Owl, 3rd place got a 9th Garber, 4th place got an 8th Garber, and I got a 4th Garber for beating all of them, right? That was incredibly frustrating. You know what I did? I won the next tournament 6 months later, 3 months later, whatever it was, right? If you keep presenting things over and over again and your things are consistently good, people have to take notice. You don't have to. There was very little convincing word-wise. I never really sat down and talked. There were a couple of people I talked with, but I didn't have to convince people with my words. I convinced them by beating the top other artists in our kingdom over and over and over again. So I think total, I'm trying to think of how many, every tournament I've entered in, every Dragon Master, I won't count quals. Quals they're kind of iffy. But every tournament I've entered in, I've always placed top 3. Always. I've never not finished top 3. I've got, like I said, 3 Kingdom wins at Dragon Master. I think I have 1 second place and 2 third places. And then a couple of quals wins in there as well. So it was just consistently winning is what got me mine. What effect do you think this Facebook group has had on the visibility and appreciation for weaving in Amtgard? I've been really proud of you guys who have been entering or showing stuff off on this. You guys make a lot of cool stuff that makes me go, I never thought about that before. That's pretty cool. I think this will help, this group in particular is helping people because they can post questions and get immediate feedback. When I started weaving, there were 2 or 3 videos on YouTube, and they were terrible quality, and they were 10 years old, and I couldn't really see. And there were one person in my kingdom who really did belts, and that was it. And the resources weren't out there, and I had to learn a lot of it through trial and error. And so that was one of the things that I created this group for, and all my videos are for, is to help people fast track that first 5 years that I had of hitting my head against the wall until I figured it out. And so I think this group and other groups like it, and the ANS Anonymous page and everything else, you guys are making awesome stuff, and I think that this will continue. My goal is that through this page and through my videos that you guys will become better weavers than I am. And I think that that's happening. I think that they're going very soon. There are going to be people who are making things that are better than me. And that pushes me forward. That makes me want to get better. But it also is really neat and really cool to see the progress of the art form that I love so much getting pushed further and further. And so I think that that's what this group is going to do. So let me scroll through. So I think that's all the questions I got. So I'm going to post this on my YouTube. I'm going to post this in this page. Feel free to give me any feedback that you have on this. If there's any questions that you have, something that didn't make sense, please let me know. Appreciate you for watching all this. If you've made it this far, please hit that like and subscribe as well. That helps out a whole lot. My name is Godric Gray with Dragon Masters. We'll see you next time.